It's absolutely not playing, everyone. So you're stuck with me again. It's absolutely not playing. I don't know why. Really disappointing. Have you ever went fishing for Nessie? No, I have not went fishing for Nessie. Me and Nessie, me and Nessie go way back. No, I haven't. I haven't gone fishing for Nessie. I'm not convinced Nessie is a real thing. I know that's really disappointing to a lot of people. I think there are other strange things that go on in the wilderness of Scotland that could be real, potentially, but Nessie is something that they've charted the waters there. They've done so many surveys of it, and they found very, very little. You know, there is the potential. If you listen to Talking Till Dawn, which is a podcast I do with Martin Yates, he did some great research on that, and there is the potential that it may be some sort of large eel that's been in the water, because I think they found DNA evidence of this in the water. So it's possible that there's something, but I don't think it's going to be. It's a dinosaur. We all want it to be a dinosaur. Let's be honest. That's what we want Nessie to be. Laura, have I tried turning it off and off again? Yes, I did. I rebooted the computer. So am I still really quiet? Am I still really quiet? Because Bitty's saying that I'm really quiet. This is Callum's never going to ever let me do another live stream again. Because this is only the second live stream I've done on my own. First one went off without a hitch, apart from I was a little bit late, just a little bit. Went off without a hitch, and this one has completely kind of collapsed, for want of a better word. Yeah. So when are we getting the next episode of Fear Noir? Ruben asks. That's tricky, because I'm as disappointed as a lot of other people are about how slow the release schedule is for Fear Noir. A couple of things have kind of got in the way of that. You know, I had some health issues, and then I've had some, like I said, I've had some issues with a loved one who's not well, and that seriously slowed things down. But also, when Fear Noir was first set up, it was going to be an anthology series, so the episodes were going to be standalone-ish. And then, really, from after we did the first episode, I decided that I had this idea for a series, for like a 6-episode arc, and I sort of fell in love with that. And so writing a 6-episode arc is much more difficult than, you know, writing something that each episode that character investigates some paranormal event. That's really a lot easier to do, because you're not having to build out the mythos or the lore very much, and you're not having to make sure that everything lines up continuity wise. But when you're doing something that's a series, you have to do that. You have to spend a lot of time making sure that everything lines up, and because the gaps in the episodes have been long, I have to go back and listen to episodes and look over my notes. It's one thing that I'm kind of really frightened of, is making a huge mistake in the audio of that show or in the script of that show, because you make a mistake and you contradict something that happened before in another episode. It's going to be problematic. Laura says my 4-year-old boy is giggling away at this too. Well, at least I've been some entertainment this evening. But this is absolutely. I was having a good day. I was having a good day until about an hour and a half ago, and then I got that phone call, and then, you know, things are problematic. So it's frustrating. So yeah, so Fear Noir should be out. I don't think it's going to be out this month. I think it'll be out next month. And what we're hoping is that once we get the 6 episodes out, that we'll actually I'll write some of the scripts way in advance for the next series, so that there's a regular release schedule. What we've started doing with the last episode is we've got Peter reading a kind of recap, kind of like a lot of the TV series did in the 70s and 80s, previously. So it's like previously on Fear Noir, and he does a recap of it. And that seems to be quite a good way to solve that problem of having a sort of sporadic release schedule. The problem as well with Fear Noir is that like my Night Terror series that I've been doing on this channel, I love doing that because it's very immediate. It's like I write the story, I edit it, I work through it, I record it, I go through the recording just to make sure that it sounds correct, and then it's out. And I love that. I'm quite impatient when it comes to putting my stories out or to put out anything that I'm working on. I'm quite impatient to like get it done and get it out there. And so it's quite difficult with Fear Noir because you're talking about me sort of plotting out the episodes, writing the scripts. Peter has amazing voice acting on it, and then I have to edit. Although his audio normally comes back almost pristine, really, it's great. But sometimes he gives alternative takes to certain lines to to give you options when you're editing it, which is really great. And so I have to edit all of that. And if it's like an hour-long episode, that in itself takes a long time. Then I have to go through it all and put in the sound effects, build the soundscape of it. Then I have to go and write and record the music for it. So it's quite complex to do all of that yourself. And I love doing it that way. Like, I wish it was a full-time job. If it was a full-time job, I would have an episode of Fear Noir out every 2 weeks, but it's not. So I have to get those episodes out as and when I can. And I also, we got loads of really good reviews, and then we got a couple of bad reviews because people were saying that like, oh, it's a dead podcast, and that's why I uploaded a sort of update to the podcast before the last episode to say, look, things are going to be a bit sporadic, because people were thinking that we'd sort of led them along a merry path. There's absolutely a conclusion to the story. I know what the conclusion of the story is. I knew what the conclusion of the story was after that first episode. The first episode, if you actually listen to it, it played out as like a pilot in of itself, told this contained story, and then I knew that I could either go the route of a serial or I could make the episodes standalone. And initially it was kind of like, well, the episodes will be standalone, but we'll drop things in so that there's kind of an arc. But it's not become that. It's become an actual proper serial. So it's like 6 episodes that are all chapters of a story. And so yeah, I'm looking forward to getting that finished. Could you work something like that? Oh, so that's okay. They are worth waiting for. You and Peter are a killer combo. Could you work something like that into Fear, little standalone episodes thrown into the mix? Yes, that's the plan for between series. So we've got 6 episodes. We've got 3 episodes to go until the first series is finished. Then there's going to be episodes, maybe 2 or 3 standalone stories, and they will buy us time to work on the full second series. So that my hope is that the second run of 6 episodes, we'll basically have 3 of them at least done by the time we release the first episode. And so we'll kind of have a consistent release schedule after that. But there's a lot, let's say there's a lot of moving parts. Thank you very much, Court Magician. I'm very glad that. Will the court baggage wait as well, or is he somewhere? I don't know. Thanks, Rich. Yeah, I'm really chuffed that people are enjoying Fear Noir, and like I say, we've had a lot of really great reviews on it, and Peter's phenomenal. He's absolutely brilliant. But it is frustrating to have this thing that you feel really passionate about and you feel is really great. Thanks, Bitty. I always really appreciate your support. You have this thing that you feel is really good, and you feel like this could be a really big podcast. Maybe even, actually generate income for the people involved. Like eventually, Well, that's not why I do it. I do it because I love telling stories. You have no clue where the baggage is these days. That's a shame, Court Magician. The baggage has been mislaid. Thanks, Ruben. I really appreciate that. Laura asks, what's your all-time favourite story? Oh, that's a tough one. That is a tough one. I think... So I'm assuming we're talking short stories here. Are we talking stories that I've written, or are we talking just in general? If it's just in general, I love a good ghost story. That's like... Those are the types of stories that I listen to the most. Read the most. And I think the best ghost story that I've read, there's a few, so I would recommend, I love M.R. James's stories. People know that have been on the channel for a while, so A Warning to the Curious is probably his masterpiece. Oh, Whistling I'll Come to You, My Lad, Casting the Ruins. Those are the big three that people talk about with M.R. James. But I love a little story called Rats, and I've talked about this story on the channel before. I think I even did a reading of it. It's like 5 pages long. It's a story that M.R. James wrote when he felt that he could no longer write great ghost stories. So he didn't have the confidence in himself to write a full piece, so he just wrote this short idea. But it's about as great a ghost story as you can get in 5 pages, and I absolutely love it. And again, it's set on the coast and down in England, and it's in these remote locations, long stretches of beach, and the history of the place comes back to haunt someone who's staying there in this little inn. It's tremendous. I really love it. But I think the best ghost story that I've ever read, isn't even an M.R. James story. I can't even believe I'm saying that. The Signal Man, Charles Dickens, right up there. But it's a story called The Beckoning Fair One by a writer called Oliver Onions. It's more of a novella, I suppose, and so, well, is it? It's about 50 or 60 pages, so it straddles that line. I don't think 50 or 60 pages is quite a short story. I don't know what you would call that, but it's not really quite a novella either. It's kind of in that grey area. But The Beckoning Fair One is a story about a writer, and it's about obsession, and that's a story I've only read once, and I haven't been able to read it again because it had a real impact on me. It stayed with me for weeks. Like, that story haunted me, not to be too over the top with it. So I would definitely recommend reading that. Mr. Delirium, I'm fine. How are you? Have you ever gotten 3/4 of the way through writing a great story and then writer's block kicks in? Yes, I do get writer's block, but it seems to manifest itself differently in me. I feel it's more to do with the excitement of the story diminishing more than anything else. Most of the time I know where I'm going to go, or I trust the process. I trust that I'm going to find where I'm writing to. But I have loads of unfinished pieces. Completing your work is the most important thing you can do as a writer. It's more important than having an incredible, you could write half of the greatest short story of all time. There's no point if you don't finish it. So that's incredibly important. John, novelette, yeah, but I've heard people some use that term interchangeably with novella sometimes, and there seems to be different opinions about what a story that length actually is. Can I write a story tonight called Ghost in the Machine? Probably. After all of that. Nikki, given only the tools and resources in the room you're currently in, how long would it take you to construct a serviceable boat capable of carrying a party of 4 across a calm lake? Well, I am currently in the kitchen, so there are a lot of wooden kitchen units, and I've got an extension cord there which is really long. It's about 6 or 7 meters, I reckon we can lash some of these things together and make a boat very quickly. So I'm going to say an hour. Give me an hour and I'll have a boat together that'll take us all far away from this nonsense. Ha! Thanks, Mr. Delirium. Yes, for those that have just arrived, I've had loads of problems with setting up the stream tonight, so it's not quite what I intended. For some reason, the last time I set it up, it was totally fine, but now it just decided not to play tonight, so you're stuck with me on camera for a little bit, and I think that's probably going to be about it, unfortunately. Dominic, how long would you need to hold on to a raw peeled potato for before you had a mental breakdown because of it? Hours, weeks, years, decades? Nah, I think I could hold... Depends why I have to hold on to it, Dominic. If I have to hold on to that bad boy because if I hold on to it for a year I'll have £1 million, I can hold on to that for a year. You better believe it. I'll hold on to that. Callum, no, you've wasted £2. Go on then, do it. Make a vote. I am not your performing monkey. Laura says, I'm 17 chapters in with a novel months and months ago and I can't get past this one. Any tips? I know exactly where all 3 books lead start to finish, but the middle parts that fill in is when I'm stuck. Honestly, like, if I do get really stuck, and I'll tell you, when I've got really stuck before, is writing plays, commissioned plays for the No Sleep podcast. There's been a couple of times where I've been up against a deadline. I've been writing the scripts for the live tours, and I've had to, I've really came to a dead end, like you say, in the middle of what's happening. And I kind of know where it goes, but I can't get it all connected and flowing. I write a treatment, literally like 1 page that just goes A to B to C to D and just lays out exactly what happens. 9 times out of 10, that's not what the story ends up becoming, but it's a sort of framework. It's like a lifeline, and it helps you move off in that direction. Other times, I'll backtrack a little bit. If you've written yourself into a corner, sometimes you need to say, well, maybe that last chapter that got me to that corner, that is a dead end. So maybe I need to try and write an alternative chapter or an alternative couple of chapters that led up to that part, and then see where that goes. Maybe that will get your mind going with it. But I often find that plotting something down, and I know a lot of writers hate doing that, but I genuinely find it to really speed up the process and to just be a safety net. Another thing you could do is you can step away from it and write something else. Write a short story. If you want to stay in that universe, write a short story that's connected to what you're writing so that you're still in that world. It doesn't need to be a 7,000 or 8,000 word long short story. It could just be something that's 1,000 words. Just a little slice of life from the novel that you're writing. Take a character, something about their backstory, and just write a little short story out of it. And sometimes that will lead into things that will bring you into it. I've written a few novels in my time, and unfortunately as a ghostwriter primarily, and so you're up against it with a deadline as well when you're doing that. So I've had to find a way to not kind of stop writing, because sometimes I'm so against the deadline that if I miss a day, it can be disastrous. So there's a lot of pressure on you that way if you're dealing with multiple projects at once. And if you fall behind in one, then it can affect everything else. So you have to have this mindset, which I think I got at university, which was to really be able to write a lot of words really, really quickly. They might not all be good words, but to just get the words down and don't worry about how it's going to turn out. Literally just get it down and be like, well, I can rewrite this. If it's not any good, I can change it. Perfect idea. My notes are a file block thick with research and all characters' histories. Yeah, I mean that's. I don't. Uh, I write a little bio for some characters. Sometimes I find myself doing that once I'm a few chapters into a book. I'll write a couple of paragraphs on a character, and it's often so that I'm keeping tabs of what's happened to them in the past, family history in case anything's mentioned that contradicts something else in the book, and then things that could motivate them down the road. Talking about games says live stream today, nice. Hope you all are having a great time. I hope we are. How are you doing? It's been it's been a bit of a disaster, to be honest, because I had some technical problems, and the live stream was meant to be a writing live stream tonight, and I think this live stream probably is going to disappear into the ether after it's finished, and people won't be able to watch it because the first half hour of it is a black screen with my voice going, I can't get this to work. So, but yeah, it's always really interesting to when writers are trying to figure out their process, especially getting out of problems, writing themselves out of problems. And the truth is, and I've said this a million times, but everyone's process is different, and you have to kind of find what works for you. Some people hate plotting, some people love it, some people focus more on the events in a book, some people focus more on characters, that brings them into the story. It just depends. Oh, I have a question. What would you say is the best way to avoid horror cliches or stereotypes? Now that's a really interesting question, because there's a high risk way to do it, but it's really high risk, and that is to not immerse yourself in horror, which sounds kind of contradictory, but if you don't immerse yourself in a genre, the chances are you're going to just write stuff that's unoriginal. But there's that tiny little sliver of chance that you could write something, if you're coming from other genres, that you could write something that is completely unique to the genre, because you're not thinking within the constraints and the tropes and the framework of horror as a genre. You're not steeped in that. There was a sort of, not an argument, but a debate about Stephen King's book The Shining and Stanley Kubrick's film version of The Shining, and Stephen King said to Stanley Kubrick, well, you've made a movie that has all these horror cliches because you don't understand the genre, you've not immersed yourself in it. But the reality is that Stanley Kubrick, I think, made something that was very unusual and outside of what people would normally do, because he wasn't a horror guy. He wasn't grounded in any one genre, So that's one way to do it, but it's high risk, like I say. I think personally, I love horror. If you love what you write, that's probably the best way to do it. So you would have read, a decent amount of horror, or watched a decent amount of horror films, or played the horror video games, read the horror comic books. So that's one way to do it. Another way is, if you have this urge inside of you, or this feeling inside of you that this isn't original, or you feel it's really too close to something else, be honest with yourself about it. Like, you can hold on to something in a story that you absolutely love, but if you don't if you don't really feel it, and you think, nah, this has been done before, like I had, and sometimes you'll hit a trope that you didn't even realise. I wrote a story many years ago called The Melancholy of Herbert Solomon, and there's a character in that's essentially burned alive by a bunch of parents. That's essentially what happens, and I wrote that happily, and then I realised someone just commented on it, and said, this is really like A Nightmare on Elm Street. And it's just like, yeah, it is. And so I've done a rewrite of that story, and I've changed that aspect of it because I realised that it was too similar. too similar. So that's one way that you can kind of do it. I did have another thought there on that, and it's just disappeared into the ether. So I apologise. You can do a sort of forked pathway in moments in a story. This is what I do sometimes, which is the story could go one way, the story could go another way, and kind of play those out in your head or write down what how I've used this example. I think I did in the last live stream a story called Forgotten Valentine. I won't go into all of it, but it ended up being more a kind of romantic horror story, ghost story. But originally it was this kind of revenge story or obsessional story in a lot of ways, with possession elements, and it got to the point in the story where it could have been one or the other, and I went for the romantic angle because the kind of obsessional female spirit has been done. It's the onryo from Japanese folklore. That's been so done. So I went a different way with it. So you just try to be aware of it, but don't be afraid to do something that's been done before, but just do it in your own way. Sweet lovely death. Just wanted to say I'm a recovering heroin addict with 3 years clean now. Well done, that's great. And your stories have gotten me through some bad nights when I absolutely needed to get away, especially off the beaten path. So thank you. That's absolutely my pleasure. That's I love to hear things like that, because you at least feel that you've put something into the world that's made it a little bit brighter. But I really appreciate that. I'm really well done on being clean for that amount of time. I've got someone very close to me who's having their problems with addiction, and it's horrendous. And I really hope they find the strength that you've found. So that's great. Taking risks while being honest with your own creation. Yeah, it's your playground, so you can do what you want with it. And there are times, like I say, that sometimes I'll write something and I'll be like, oh, well, that is a little bit similar to that over there, but I'll just, I sometimes think about, John Lennon used to talk about how he would hear something that he liked. So the album Rubber Soul, for example, I think they'd heard Pet Sounds, maybe the Beach Boys album, and he was like, oh, we're going to get left behind here, we need to come up with so or was it Rubber Soul, I can't remember. He tried to write in that vein and it came out completely different, but he tried to kind of copy that sound and came up with something new, because he still went towards it with a sort of individualistic approach, and that's tremendously important. Excuse me, slipping away. Still got my Happy Halloween cup that my wife says really must go away because it's May. But it's Halloween all the time, everyone. So yeah, I am so sorry that this hasn't worked out the way that I wanted to. It's a bit disappointing, but like I say, my day has went a bit topsy-turvy the last couple of hours, and this was just the icing on the cake for this not to work properly. I'm still considering making that boat, Callum, if you're still here. I'm a little bit better lit because Callum suggested a light that I get for these live streams. So the last time I think I was in darkness, although you can't really see though that I actually still have a candle going here. So I hope to do another one of these soon. We're actually talking about doing a live stream potentially on Sunday, maybe on a out and about somewhere, a location where we filmed a short horror film called A Haunted Dream for the channel. So I would definitely check that out if you haven't. Hopefully we'll be doing a live stream from there on Sunday, just depending what kind of happens. There's Nightmare Before Christmas bedclothes on my son's bed right now. You're raising them properly, Laura. You're raising them properly. Nightmare Before Christmas is excellent. I went to, when would it be now? Well, it was pre-pandemic. A couple of years ago, Me and my wife went to see the live show, and it was Danny Elfman and most of the cast and an orchestra, and they had the film up on a big screen and they performed it. But then when the songs started, they came out on stage and sang them. It was tremendous. It was absolutely fantastic. I love that film. I know they keep talking about making a sequel, which I part of me would like to see, and then part of me is kind of like, it's such a good movie. Sequels normally just water things down. Maybe I could do this and wait for comments. Just drink for that long. But yeah, so the story that we had started on the last live stream, I've not touched it. I've not touched that story. I wanted to come back in tonight and do at least another 500 to 1,000 words. That's probably going to have to wait for next week, and then I'm actually going to, yeah, it will probably be next week before anything like that happens again. He's only 4 and he loves it. That's great. Yeah, like, you know, it like every kid's different. I was shown a lot of movies I probably shouldn't have been shown when I was like 5 or 6. You know, really there was stuff I definitely should have been watching, but that's kind of made me partly who I am. But you know, things like Not a Nightmare Before Christmas, like The Fog and The Thing and stuff like that. But I think it depends on the kid. With certain things, there's some kids that are really sensitive, and you wouldn't want to show them something that might upset them or scare them. And then there's other kids that it doesn't affect them, and they're just like, show me the good stuff, you know. Show me Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. I want to watch Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom with my daughter, and I want to watch The Goonies. But they've both got questionable bits in them that I need to wait a wee while longer. She's only 3. I've enjoyed all your live streams so far. You guys are doing a pretty good job despite the setbacks that you mentioned. Thanks very much. Talking about games, that's lovely to hear. Yeah, it's I'm just so pleased that there are people that actually watch the live streams, because I've jumped in other live streams before and there's been like nobody watching. And I think I would still probably just sit and stream myself writing and not really say much to the camera if no one was watching. But it's tremendously uplifting that there are people. I said this, and I released a video the other day, you know, that I'm just so happy that there are people that watch our stuff and listen to it. And it's like, it's other than my family and friends, this is my passion, you know, writing stories, recording sort of storytelling, podcast episodes, and hopefully getting a little bit of filmmaking done as well. I just love making things. Ever since I was wee, it's just been the main thing I've always done, just making things. And it's the time that I feel kind of most alive. I know it sounds cliched, but it's the time where you just get in this kind of flow state. It's just fun. It's just an absolute blast, creating things, whether it be writing or whatever it is. The Court Magician says, my 3-year-old found Cthulhu plushie and now she won't give it back. That's amazing. I know. As long as Cthulhu what type of Cthulhu is this? Is this a Cthulhu that's dormant and under the ice, or has it risen up? One will give you terrifying, maddening dreams. The other one will just probably destroy the planet. When I look on this, I've got like, there's a lag to it, but it looks like the jumper I'm wearing is black. It's red. It's a red jumper, everyone. This webcam's lying to you. So, yeah, does anyone have any other questions or anything else? I have to put dinner on. Ruben, what are you having for dinner? Tell us what you're having for dinner before you go. Thanks very much for watching, Ruben, and taking the time. Sorry it's been a bit of a mess up. Is the risen up kind? The Court Magician says, well, that's probably better for a kid, because the ones that get into your mind, you know, probably not the best. Laura says that your son's obsessed with Chucky. He was on YouTube on my tablet and I forgot the censorship wasn't set in mine. I'm terrified of that sort of thing happening. I put the real Ghostbusters on for my daughter a little while ago. She loves the opening of it, but I put on a full episode, and even that, it was like, oh, we'll watch the real Ghostbusters. And then I forgot that the ghosts genuinely are like, rah. I was like, okay, off. But I can't wait to do all that. 4 p.m. in Mexico. Doll Factory and Chucky rips his hand off, his wrist trapped in the bars. Yeah. Oh dear, oh dear. It's funny though, like I say, it just depends on the person. Sweet Lovely Death says, I'd love to get into writing. I've been a horror freak most of my life, and due to my experiences in the street, I have a lot of really neat ideas, but I've never really learned the basics of writing. Well, I like Stephen King has this thing that he says that he thinks that not everyone's capable of being a great writer. Most people aren't. You can maybe become a decent writer, but or a good writer. I don't believe that. I think anyone can become a great writer. I'm not saying I'm a great writer, but I'm saying I think potentially anyone can hit that. And I would just say go for it. The thing is, I've met a lot of people in my life who call themselves writers, and a lot of those people, and they're really well intentioned, but you realise that they love the idea of writing. They love the idea of being a writer, but they don't love the actual writing. They don't love the process, and they don't complete what they start. So those are the two things that I would say. Try to get that down as early as possible. Love the process. Love creating things, and write till you finish. I mean, I'm not saying you need to finish everything in one sitting, but stick with your project as best you can and finish it. And even if it doesn't turn out great, you can go back and rewrite it. But I would definitely do it. It's writing and playing an instrument. Those are two things that I think will just significantly improve your life. They're therapeutic, even if you don't get people reading it. It's therapeutic just to get these things out. And if you've had a lot of complex experiences, then you bring a lot to the table. You really will. Bitty, fried chicken and mashed potatoes. Is that what Ruben says he's making? I'm doing barbecue chicken and potatoes. I'm confused. Both sound lovely. 4 p.m. in Oklahoma, Bitty. 10 after 5 in Ontario, Canada. Bitty, cool. Sweet Lovely Death says, I'm a musician. I played since I was a kid. Violin, guitar, bass, drums, etc. Lyrics, yes. Poems, yes. But writing stories I'm working on. I would say... Well, here's what I would say about that. I wrote a lot of songs as well. I still do. And I would say that if you are coming from a musical background and you've written lyrics to songs and you've written poems, you've got a great chance at being able to write great short stories or novels. Because when you go the other way, every writer writes poems. Every writer does. I write poems, but I would never call myself a poet. Poets are really rare, and if you've like worked on that first, I think being a great poet is about one of the most difficult skills to have. And I think you'll have a sense of rhythm and melody to your writing that you'll definitely take in to what you're doing. So I would absolutely say that you'll sort of tap into that same creative process and you'll be absolutely fine. You just need to figure out what your process is for writing. That's all you really need to do. Read about how other writers work and try different things. Sometimes you'll try to do things exactly the same way one writer does and then another one, and you'll find what works for you. Maybe you want to plot things out. Maybe you want to shoot from the hip and just write and see where the story takes you. But I would absolutely say just go for it. Don't hold back. Yeah, that's Laura's given a really great bit of advice there. You could try limit yourself to a page and a half and write about a scene describing everything you see in detail, what you smell, what you hear, what you taste, etc. Yeah, that's a really good idea. Talking about games, so I only write stories for my role playing game group adventures, but I also kind of write stories when I play solo role playing games. As far as I'm concerned, a lot of the people who write really good uh, adventure scenarios, they're writers. They are writers, and they're writing they're writing short stories. Essentially, they're still doing that, but they're combining it with the world building of a novel. And I've got tremendous respect. Some of the funnest times I ever had when I was a kid was my friend's brother used to run RPG nights, like it was Warhammer role playing, not the tabletop, and we used to play that, and he was such a great storyteller. He's involved in game design now, so I'm sure he still is a great storyteller. But I think that writing scenarios for game is a real skill. I've done a couple myself over the years. There's some on this channel, Call of Cthulhu. Right, I think, unfortunately, everybody, I am going to call it a night. I'm really sorry for the whole mess up with the stream. Try and figure that out. Maybe if I'd had the half an hour, my intention had been to sit down and just check everything was working before I came down here at 9. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. So hopefully the next time everything will be perfect. Just before I go, Sweet Lovely Death says, I guess I get worried about vocabulary. It's funny, I can tell stories to friends and paint the scene well enough, but when I'm in front of my laptop, I go blank. I get worried. Don't worry about the vocabulary. Worry about... Don't worry. Don't make it a worrisome process. If you're a verbal storyteller, use that. Dictate your pieces. One of my favourite writers of all time is Rod Serling, and he hardly ever sat down at a typewriter and wrote down stories. He dictated them, and then someone else typed them up, and then he would go through and edit them. So I would definitely try just dictating the story, record it yourself. I've done that just to see what the stories would be like, and they changed. For me, the complexity of the language changed when I tried to write like that, but it was definitely a worthwhile exercise. And I think if you're more inclined to be verbally creative, then do that, and then rewrite what you've got from there. Yeah, thanks very much, everyone. So we're back soon. All right, I apologise, and I hope you all have a really, really great night. And all take care of yourselves, and I'll be back soon. Okay, good night. I haven't even hit stop, have I? I'm about to. Good night, everyone.